Welcome to the Zesty Ginger Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex. We are here for transformation. Yours, ours, and the collective. Personal and professional for practitioners. But not just any transformation. Compassionate transformation. Because between the two of us, we have seemed to have done things the painful way. Let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We aren't afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul. Combining 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to the best life possible in a compassionate way. Compassion, yes, yet plan to roll up your sleeves. Transformation requires your participation. And a quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into the episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Zesty Podcast. I have a special guest here with me, Gianna. Hi, welcome, Gianna.
Hi. Thank you.
So excited. So I'm going to give a little backstory as to why we're doing this interview today and why I'm very excited about it, because I have this lovely book here, this lovely book that she wrote here that a friend suggested I read and connected us. And I just want to tell this story, Gianna, because I reached out to you. You sent the book to me and I was like, oh, I'll read this. I'll interview her for the podcast. This will be a great topic. And then I lost track of everything and time and the book. And we connected about a year later and I was like, I felt horrible. I was like, I was going to go read it before we connected and I couldn't find this book anywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person, she put her heart and soul into this book and she sent it to me and I've lost it. And when we got on the phone, it was so beautiful and amazing because you said to me, you're like, oh, it'll show up when it's supposed to. I was like, wow, that is right. There's some faith right there that this is all happening and will happen the way it's meant to. And what's so funny is that it did. And I found the book a few months later. I was looking for a book for a friend who was in a car accident and she can't move. Her neck is broken and she needed things to do. And I was looking for something and there was the book and it was right, Gianna, it was right in the garage on top of everything else. And I looked there. I swear I looked there. And here it was popping up at just the perfect time for me to read it. So thank you for writing this. Thank you for being here today. Really, really excited to talk about it. And before we get into this, I just want to read the bio, Gianna's bio, so you can understand a little bit of her background. So originally from Sydney, Australia, Gianna Mauceri is a spiritual mentor and counselor with a background in integrative healing and yoga. Definitely our people. After 18 years of hairdressing, Gianna was involved in a severe car help others who have experienced any kind of trauma and support them through their healing journey. And she now runs her own healing business in San Diego, California, offering transpersonal counseling and regular integrative healing trainings, healing tools that helped her survive, heal, and live a life of unconditional love. So the book I have here is Soul of a Spirit Warrior, a true story of healing, survival, and resilience. And she also has an Oracle card deck in 2023. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I could not put the book down. So I'm very excited to talk about it today. I'm excited that you wrote it. And just start off, introduce yourself, and just tell us a little bit of backstory of how this whole journey came to be, how this book came to be, what led you here.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for that warm welcome. I feel so blessed to be here and really honored. And it really, it's just such a beautiful, display of like divine timing and everything. So thanks for sharing that story. I definitely was hoping to share that piece myself too. So I, like you said, I was, a hairdresser and a yogi, and I was just really immersed in the healing arts and really interested in it. I knew that I was here to help people. I thought it was through hairdressing, and I thought that that was my thing, until I, started to learn more about the body, about yoga, about healing. And I started to work with my own mentors in just understanding myself more on a deeper level of, why I am the way I am, and everything. And so I was just really on this spiritual journey within myself, and I was in awe already just of that and the healing that I was already doing and that was happening, and learning about myself. And I was really on this beautiful journey, so I really wanted to share that with everyone. And it was really cool that I did get that platform as a hairdresser to like connect with people like that. But I always knew it was more. And I just knew that I was here to help people. So in 2016, I was in the car accident, like you had mentioned, and that changed my life forever. So I, just really briefly, and I know we'll probably go into it a little bit more, but I was very active. I, was very busy, had a very busy lifestyle. And the car accident, it was a head-on collision. I was hit by a drunk driver who was driving the wrong way on the freeway. And that changed my life forever. So I wasn't sure if I was going to die or not. It was a very, very interesting feeling that I didn't know. And I woke up from a weeks-long coma in the hospital, and I just knew that that was my purpose. It was almost like I wasn't even angry in a way, because it was almost like this real understanding of like, oh shit, this really is what I'm supposed to be doing through this, and through this divine tragedy, I like to call it. There's work to do for myself more, but also for others, and to be able to help support others who have, experienced any kind of trauma like this. So I knew right away that it was a book. I'd always wanted to write a book. In fact, actually, before the accident, just weeks before, I bought a journal, and I told all my friends, like, this is going to be my book. This will be my book. It's this beautiful journal. And I didn't write in it until the day before the accident. And when I woke up in the hospital, I had them bring the journal, and I just knew this is where I'll start writing the book to tell this story. So that's how I got there.
Wow.
And so I'm sure that the story will unfold more. But I started writing the book from my hospital bed.
We just recently, Gianna, on our podcast in December, we did a series called The Series of Possibility. So if anybody has not yet listened to that, definitely go back and listen to that. And that is really my goal here today, because reading your story, it's amazing to me, like you said, that you had that kind of mindset or the beliefs around being in a very severe state and a very tragic accident, and to be able to see it with that kind of clarity of that this was part of your path and your purpose at that point is amazing. So that is my goal, to everybody can hear the possibility in your story, because people are going through all different versions, right, of things
Absolutely.
that are hard and traumatic. And for me, reading it and having at the same time one of my really good friends here going through a very hard recovery from a car accident, and reading your story, I was able to then watch in her. She's one of the happiest people to be around right now. She is so grateful to be alive, and doesn't actually know, because of how the accident happened, doesn't actually know if she'll live very much longer, right, because of a clot. So there is just this presence that has been amazing to witness. So I think really hearing the story, as rough as it is, people can feel like, well, if they got through that, I can get through what I'm going through. So thank you. for sharing.
Yeah.
So let's go back to a little bit about the accident, because there's a lot of questions I have about it.
Yeah.
It's so well written. So I really just want everybody to go out and get the book. So I won't spoil all the goodness. But one of the things that you said, and one of the things that I know happens for people in general when something happens, is you kind of start to rethink it. Like, well, what if the timing had been different? I think you mentioned you went in to get a sandwich or something, right? Like if you hadn't, like you wouldn't have been on the freeway at that time. And what was that process of thinking through of like the what ifs it were different?
Yeah, I would say apart from the physical pain that I felt in my body, the what ifs were probably the worst, like spiral for me to go down. And it was regular. It was like moment to moment, the what ifs that would come up. So even though, and I do want to point out just straight up as well, even though I did have that mindset that, okay, this is my purpose, it was really hard. I just want to point that fact out. Like waking up, it wasn't like unicorns and rainbows of like, like, yay. And, doing cartwheels. Obviously I wasn't doing cartwheels, but it was definitely the mindset of the what ifs was probably the most challenging part. And I feel like I love that question. I love that you went there first, because the what ifs can definitely take us down a really, really dark spiral. And I think it's great for us to look at the what ifs, but at the same time, I had to keep bringing myself back to acceptance. And that was the key for me, because when I went into the what ifs, like, what if I didn't go back and get that sandwich? Or what if I, stayed a little longer at the yoga studio that night? And the list can go on and on. They were probably the darkest part for me. And that was probably the deepest work for me, was having to bring myself back to the moment, like every moment. It felt like of every day. It wasn't even, where people are like, oh, day-to-day process, baby steps. It was like a moment to moment mental challenge that I had to step up to very often. And I would say that was the most challenging part for me, was to not let my mind go into the what ifs.
And what would you say, did you have a practice or a tool that seemed to help you the most in those moments?
Yeah, that's when the breathing really helped me to come back. And I was so grateful that I had that tool. I had just been studying really deeply breath work like weeks before. So I was so grateful that I learned that, because those deep breaths were the things that were like, okay, come into the moment. I know that could have happened, but it didn't. And this happened. So let's work with this. Let's breathe into like this. Let's lean into this moment and work with this moment, because that moment didn't happen. This moment is. So let's be here in this moment. And that was probably the main thing, was just like breathing. We forget to breathe when we're in stress or trauma. And I would say it's the number one tool to go back to in any, stressful moment. So that was probably my number one. And I was so grateful to have learned that.
So powerful. So you came out of a coma and you're looking around at your body, and you had how many broken things? What? Tell us the state of where you were.
All right. So I woke up and I couldn't feel or move my legs, especially my right side. So my right foot was crushed, like all the little bones in my right foot were crushed. My tib and fib in my right leg was both completely shattered. So there was a metal rod placed in there. My knee was like busted open. And so then my spine had a compression fracture. My right arm also had a metal rug because it had just broken in half. My nose was broken. And probably the most shocking thing for me was looking down at my stomach, because I didn't remember anything happening into my belly or anything like that. But my stomach had been cut open because my colon was punctured. So my stomach was actually stapled together all the way from like my breastbone down to like the pubic bone pretty much. And it was stapled together. So it was really, really scary to see that on my own body. So that was probably the most shocking thing. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a lot.
And I know in the book you mentioned that you at first you really didn't know that it had been a week. And I have to ask, my most favorite part of the book is that in the process of this in between, where you're, in the coma and you are going through a process of kind of deciding whether you'll stay or go. I'd love for you to explain any part of that, right? Everyone wants to know like what happens after we die, or right,
Yeah.
when people have near death experiences, and what was the experience for you?
Yeah, I think that was probably the most potent part for me, was like waking up to the body, but remembering the beautiful place that I had been in while I was asleep. So it's like going back and forth. But yes, so through the coma process, I experienced what we call a near-death experience. And I was taken to a place that I'm really familiar with, which is in Venice, Italy. And it was, for me, it felt like I was just walking through the canals of Venice, which I knew very well because I've done that before in my real life. I spent a lot of time in Venice walking those canals. So I wasn't surprised that that's where I was. But it was kind of never ending. So I was in this never ending Venice world that just kept opening up for me. And I was connected to what I felt like at the time was my angels. And there were 7 of these beautiful lights, angels or energy, whatever you want to call them. For me, I refer to them as angels. And they were helping me to decide if I want to return to my body on earth. And I know I've heard a lot of stories of, people looking down at their bodies and things like that. That wasn't my experience. My experience was more of a knowingness that my body was really injured back on earth. I didn't know like the capacity of it. It was almost like, we know you're injured, but I didn't kind of know like the capacity of the whole thing. I just knew that if I came back, it was going to be challenging. It would be work. And I had to kind of decide. The decision was like, are you willing to go back and do that work? Or the other choice was, or what I felt, is it was all a feeling. There was no words or anything. It was just like this feeling. So, my other option that came through was, if you don't go back, you start again. You do it all again. It's almost like it felt to me, or the visions that I had or felt through that was like pressing a reset button and just beginning life again, like beginning a whole new set of things again. And so in that moment, I decided to come back and to do it all and to continue. And they were reminding me, you've done so much work already. And the most thing that I think was, brought joy to me when I woke up was just remembering this message that I had received from them, was that if you do go back, you'll be supported. So I felt very supported coming back. And that was, I think, what got me through a lot of it too, was just knowing that I had this other experience, this other unworldly, unexplainable I tried to explain it in the book as best as I could, but for me, it still feels unexplainable. There are no words that can explain that. And that piece of it, that real beautiful angelic piece that I spent in Venice, was definitely another part to like coming back to the moment. Remember, you're supported. Remember, you can do this. And that was really huge for me in my healing process, was knowing that, sure, we have this place here on earth and this humanly realm, but also understanding that I had this connection to my higher self as well. Whatever that may, or whatever people may refer to that, to source, to spirit, to God, whatever you want to say. But that connection to, I say God, really helped me to get through it. And so that was my coma experience. There's lots of levels to the accident. That was one of my favorite pieces of the whole thing, was just knowing that we're supported.
Do you think that was what drove you the most, like to come back or make that decision? I know it was a feeling, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Like knowing that there would be support. It was definitely, that's just when I remember. I don't remember like being like, okay, guys, let's do it. I'll go back then. And then they bring me back. It was just like a feeling of like, you are supported and you'll be supported no matter what. And that was the thing that got me back. I'm sorry, I've got this.
What do you think was like the darkest point? Because I imagine there were ups and downs in the process. And what was the darkest point? And then what kept you going at that point?
Yeah, I think the darkest point was understanding that through this whole process that I was experiencing PTSD, and I'd never experienced anything that mentally challenging before. So that was the hardest part for me, was when the post trauma really hit. After the accident, it was definitely, I definitely was on a high. I was really grateful to be alive. I had my legs, I had my body. And then when that kind of started to wear off, that's when the PTSD hit. And that's something that I really want to share with people too, who have been through trauma, is that PTSD or post-trauma is a real thing. It is very mentally challenging to experience things like night sweats, really bad nightmares if you've been through stuff, anxiety. I was someone who experienced anxiety in my life anyway. But to have experienced anxiety to that level was really challenging. There was one point where I didn't know what to do. That's why I was saying, like, I had the mindset, and the mindset was always there, like, you can get through this. However, there are things like PTSD and anxiety and trauma that can hit us later down the track, even when we're not expecting it. And there's support for that. There's help for that. So for me, that was the most challenging point that I just couldn't do on my own. I needed help for that. And like, I thought I was going crazy actually at one point, because I was experiencing like anxiety that made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't eat. And this was like all kind of post, maybe a few months later, when I was starting to, come to and learning to walk and stuff again. It was really challenging. It was like, oh, okay, now the real stuff is happening, right? Now we're going to try to take a step here and, try to get back into a normal life, and like learning to work with a body that is not the same as it used to be was really, really challenging, and brought up all of that anxiety and fear for me. So in that case, that's where I knew, like, I need help. I need like therapy, like serious trauma therapy. And that's when I found my therapist to work with. She's in Australia. And thank goodness, because it was just a matter of somebody explaining to me that this is normal. This is what happens. You've been through major trauma. Our brain goes into this survival mode where we just place it kind of into like a file into the back of our mind because we can't deal with it. It's all too much at the time. So we place it in the survival mode. And what trauma is, or PTSD, whatever, is when you're ready to look at it, it will come. And it may come in like flashbacks when we're not ready. It may come in nightmares. I was having severe night sweats that would wake me up. Just experiencing the anxiety I was talking about. So for that kind of thing, it was just so reassuring to speak to someone and learn that, oh, this is all part of the process. This is what happens when we experience something traumatic like this, and we need to talk about it. We have to talk about it. Otherwise, it will live inside us forever and ever, and we never deal with it. It doesn't go away. It just keeps coming back in different ways. It can cause dis-ease in our bodies, even if we don't deal with that trauma. So for me, I was just really happy to learn and be educated on the mental state of how trauma can affect us and just how challenging that can be. And just to bring that awareness, it brought awareness to me of like how many people must go through things that are really challenging and don't have support and don't know how to speak about it, or not in communities that are open to speaking about it. I think it's getting a lot better nowadays. But that was the most important piece for me, was to be able to speak about it and to just let people know in the moment, like, hey, I'm having like severe anxiety right now. Like, I need to move. I need to get out of this, like, and just be able to speak it out loud, and for me, that's what I learned, was to ask for help when we're feeling mentally challenged, and to look for the help, because it is out there and we can get it.
Oh, and there's so much power when you speak it out loud, right, Gianna? Because then it gives other people, they feel that they can also speak all the things that they were holding inside of them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because like you said, there's thousands, millions of people who are experiencing have experienced trauma and have PTSD and and I know maybe at some point, maybe you're thinking there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, once you start to understand that what the brain is doing and that it's really protecting you, you can start to move that energy and also know it's part of the process. I'm curious. So for people who are in this place who maybe have a friend or themselves, like was it the speaking and being open about what's actually happening? Was that the most helpful? Or what would be any advice you'd have for someone who is kind of still in this PTSD phase of an experience where they haven't actually moved through it or processed it?
Yeah, I would say to find somebody that you really trust, like a professional person that you trust. Sometimes our friends, I love friends and family and everything, but sometimes they do just want to, they don't even know what to say, because trauma is a lot. It's a lot for people. So sometimes even our closest friends and families are going through the trauma with us, and they just kind of are saying what they need to say or whatever. But if we seek out that professional, that someone that is trained in the field, I highly recommend, therapy for everybody, or counseling. Like you said, an open space, and sharing more with your friends what you're going through, maybe not for advice, but just letting them know, hey, I've been going through this, and, I'm just bringing this awareness so that I'm not alone in this. And you'll just be surprised how amazing that it feels to just speak about it. The main thing, because you said something before that really hit home, is that we start thinking that something is wrong with us, which leads to guilt, shame, fear, aloneness, like hibernation, all those things. But when we can just, be open and feel safe in a community. I know that may, for some people, they may say like, I don't have that community, or I am alone, I don't have anyone. That's where I would say there's other help out there. There is other ways to do it. We just have to be, it's really about being willing to. And, what changes do we want to make? And are we willing to show up for that? And those are the main questions that when I work with somebody now or guide them through a process, is just looking at the pieces or the symptoms that they're experiencing and allowing them to decide if they are willing to just make a small shift. That's all we need to do, is just a tiny shift. And I think that's a really important message too. Coming into the new year, we have all these goals and rules and expectations of ourselves, but really one small action, like one tiny shift, is actually like, it's huge. It's the whole, like the drop in the ocean, it's the whole ocean. Just by that one step and having that compassion for yourself enough to do it. And that was my process. People are like, well, how did you do it? And I'm like, it was moment to moment. Each moment I had to decide. I had a choice. Do I want to be a victim of this moment? Or where can I feel empowered? What could I do to bring that light back or that strength back? And there were moments where I didn't want to. I just wanted to cry, and that was okay as well. There were days where I would just snot face cry into my mother's arms, and that was fine too. But we have to allow ourselves to really experience it. And I think for me, that was the biggest part of it, was I just had to let myself experience all of it, even the hard stuff. The pain for me was all like, okay, what can we do? This is happening. You've got anxiety. You have PTSD. This is really challenging. But what can we do to love myself just a little bit more in this moment? And for me, that's what it's just showing up for ourselves.
Do you feel like you're a very different person the before the accident and after?
Yeah, absolutely. In so many ways. I have so much compassion now for myself, but mostly for other people. Oh my goodness. Like I really learned that everyone's going through their own thing and their own process. And I really learned a lot of compassion that I don't think I had that before.
And I imagine forgiveness. So what was your process? Obviously you were hit on a freeway with someone going the wrong way. I imagine there were some feelings about that. How was the process of forgiveness for the incident and what happened and the person?
Yeah, I feel like when I woke up from a coma, everybody was really mad at the driver. And, rightly so. I'd been really injured. But I don't know, for me, there was just something within that. There were definitely times of anger, and don't get me wrong, I definitely went through like a lot of anger, and I had to process that anger. I experienced anger actually like I never even felt before. So I let that all come up, but there was, I guess maybe had done the healing, or maybe my beliefs of, us all having our own path and choosing that path, before we came. I'm not sure, but either way, the belief or the feelings that I had around the driver were peaceful. And I definitely felt I forgave him right away. There was just something inside of me that understood that this is the journey, this is the path. And I felt sad for him more than anything, because he was young, and it just made me even more inspired to help young people or help people in general, because more than anything, I just felt into like what was that person going through that they were doing that, and I just put myself in that position. And again, just had a lot of compassion for him. So yes, the whole incident brought up lots of feelings of anger at some points, because I was experiencing a lot of pain for a long time. But it was never around the person who did it. It was just, I just had to bring peace and forgiveness into it, and continue to send him love and send his family lots of love, because I know that they were experiencing the trauma as well. It must have been really hard for them too. So I forgive.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I know this all has impacted you and your life so much. So share a little bit now about how are you using everything that you've learned and to impact others?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned earlier, it led me to continue on my path of healing for myself, obviously. And then when I was ready to, I started to continue working with people through their trauma as well. And so I have my own healing practice here in San Diego, where I mentor people. I actually created my own program. So after the book, Spirit Warrior Training, I had a lot of feedback from people that reached out who had, experienced similar things. And so I created a program called Spirit Warrior Training, where I just put together the most important things that helped me, which, in my journey was like a lot of inner child work, going back to the core, to the root of things, understanding limiting beliefs, understanding, where I'm holding on to codependency in my life, all of the pieces that really helped me, I put it into this program. So I work one-on-one with people now, guiding them through the program, Spirit Warrior Training. And it's really deeper one-on-one work. And it's a journey, it's a journey that we go through. It doesn't happen overnight. I teach the tools. It's mostly about tools. So teaching tools of self-care, self-love, and looking at parts of our lives where we have held on to these limiting beliefs and where they may have come from, and really helping people to feel more empowered and tools for coping with things like anxiety, PTSD. And yes, I work with people on all different levels, at different ages. And that is, I combine that with different healing modalities that I've learned along the way, like sound healing, and energy, different types of energy healing. And so that's where I love to share. I love to help people along their journey as well. And just really, it's about the tools, about giving people tools to be able to to get through the everyday life and work with others in that way. So that's where I'm at now, and I love it. And like you said, I'm also currently in the midst of designing my first deck of oracle cards, and that's been a really exciting process as well.
Gianna, where can people where's the best place on the internet to find you?
Yeah, you can just find me at my website, which is just my name, giannamauceri.com. And that's got all my info. That's got all of my services that I offer. And you can connect with me through there as well. And usually through my Instagram is where I post a lot of my stops, my workshops and events that I have coming up and things like that.
Perfect. And I suggest everybody goes out and gets the book, Soul of a Spirit Warrior. It's fabulous. It's an amazing read. I couldn't put it down, so make sure you have a little time blocked off.
Thank you so much.
I really, really appreciate you being here and sharing this amazing story with everybody. It's true inspiration. I think if everyone can see the possibility in their own life from that. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.